The sun crests the volcanic rim of Diamond Head like a reluctant flare, gilding the turquoise lagoon in hues of molten brass. Palm fronds whisper secrets to the trade winds, and the air hangs heavy with the scent of plumeria and diesel, Paradise's perfume laced with the faint rot of coral reefs scraped by keels. Battleship Row slumbers in the shallows, a gray leviathan of steel spines. The USS Arizona, Nevada, Oklahoma, and at berth F7, the USS West Virginia. They call her, a coal-fired colossus of 32,000 tons, her 4 triple turrets squatting low like armored crouches against the horizon. Aboard her, the crew stirs in the false peace of a Sunday muster. The Navy's blue water world is a fractured fellowship, its decks divided not by salt spray but by skin. White sailors command the bridges and gun decks. Black mess attendants like Doris Miller scrub the galleys and polish the silver. Mess kits their measure, not metal. It's 1941, and Uncle Sam's fleet enforces the color line with the precision of a theodolite. No black man touches a gun, no matter his frame or fire. Enlistment promised adventure, segregation delivered drudgery. But in the quiet hours before reveille, dreams don't discriminate. They swell like the harbor tides, lapping at bulkheads etched with salt and sidelong glances. The air down here is a stew of humidity and ham hocks, the sizzle of bacon grease popping like distant Morse code in cast-iron skillets. Steam curls from coffee urns, mingling with the tang of brasso and the earthy undernote of unwashed wool. 40-odd black sailors, messmen, stewards, attendants, move in rhythmic ritual, their khaki dungarees crisp despite the damp. They are the ship's unseen sinew, polishing silver for the wardroom, folding linens for officers who wouldn't share their table. Laughter punctuates the clatter, low, resonant, a bulwark against the blues. At the heart of it stands Doris Miller, 22 years old, a gentle giant forged in the red clay of Waco, Texas. 6'3", 200 pounds of quiet colossus, his shoulders broad as cotton bales, his hands calloused from bull-breaking boyhood. Enlisted in '39 for the promise of pay and passage. $21 a month to send home to Mama Henrietta and the 9 siblings, scrabbling on a sharecropper's plot. He's mess attendant 3rd class, second rate in a first-class fight. His face, broad and unlined, holds eyes like polished obsidian, steady, absorbing the world's slights without shattering. Adventure, he thinks, stacking plates with a soft clink. This is just another field, except the rows are round and the sun don't set. Seaman First Class Charles Calhoun, mid-20s, wiry, with a gap-toothed grin that defies deck-swabbing despair, sidles up, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag that smells of lye. Dory, you dreamin' about that girl back in Waco again? Or you finally gonna ask Miss Rosie for a dance topside? Hell, even the officers get shore leave. Us, we get grease traps. Miller chuckles, deep as a bass drum sliding a tray of eggs into the warmer. His voice is molasses slow, laced with Central Texas twang. Rosie'd sooner dance with a shark, Charlie, and me? I ain't complainin'. Least here the overseers got stars on their collars stead of whips. Pass the salt, brother, this bacon's drier than Mama's sermons. The men guffaw, a chorus cutting the confinement. Calhoun slaps Miller's back, solid as oak, and they fall into the cadence, chopping onions, cracking eggs, the knife work a symphony of survival. Up forward, in the white crew's berthing, it's cards and craps. Here, it's community in the cramped. They share smokes rolled from tobacco pouches, stories of juke joints and Jim Crow sundowns. We're the Navy's niggers, Calhoun mutters once under breath. But we keep the belly full, don't we? Miller nods, silent. He reads voraciously, poets like Langston Hughes smuggled in dog-eared pages, verses that murmur of rivers deeper than prejudice, ancient as the Nile, patient as the Mississippi carving canyons through stone. Reveille bleats from the West Virginia's topside speakers, a tinny reveille that rouses the fleet like a collective groan. Sailors spill onto the fantail, whites in neat columns for muster, blacks lingering in the shadows of the superstructure, their duties deferred to the divine rhythm of Sunday brunch. The harbor hums with halcyon haze, seaplanes skimming the surface like dragonflies, launches ferrying liberty parties to Honolulu's honky-tonks. Paradise indeed, hula girls on the mind, mai tais on the horizon. No one glances skyward, no one sees the contrails blooming like ink in rice paper, faint feathers at 6,000 feet. Captain Mervyn Bennion, 50s, stern-jawed, a Salt Lake City Mormon with a spine of spruce and a faith in fleet discipline, paces the quarterdeck, his gold-braided cap catching the light. A tactician's tactician. Bennion's commanded destroyers from Veracruz to the Yangtze. Now Weavy's his charge, her anti-aircraft batteries primed but undercrewed. Segregation sabotage, leaving mounts unmanned while messmen mopped. He nods to his executive officer, eyes scanning the postcard vista. Gentlemen, remember, vigilance is our vigil. The Japs saber rattle, but this is our pond, secure for church call. A murmur of amens ripples through the ranks. Below, Miller and Calhoun haul hampers topside, silver domes gleaming, victuals for the brass. The deck vibrates faintly underfoot, the ship's heart beats steady as a metronome. Home away from hell, Miller reflects, inhaling the briny breeze. Cotton fields to cradle of the deep. Ain't no boll weevils here, just barnacles and bullshit. The first shadow falls silent. A Nakajima B-5N Kate torpedo bomber slicing the silk of morning at wavetop height. Its pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Shigeru Itaya, grips the stick, the sea's reflection fracturing in his goggles. Below, the West Virginia lolls, unsuspecting, her bilges awash in the shallows, easy prey for the fish slung beneath. Type 91 aerial torpedoes, 1,800 pounds of high explosive wrapped in 18 feet of malice. The world erupts without elegy. A muffled thoom shudders the harbor floor, the torp's kiss, intimate as a stiletto. The West Virginia lurches starboard, her hull venting a gout of seawater that sprays the forecastle like a geyser's gasp. Plates rattle in the wardroom, coffee sloshes across tabletops. Alarms haven't sounded yet, the concussion confuses, a seismic hiccup in Paradise's pulse. On deck, Bennion freezes, then barks into the 1MC. Bennion, General Quarters, man your battle stations, this is no drill. Pandemonium uncoils like a spring, sailors bolt from bunks, half-dressed, cursing the false alarm. But it's no drill. Overhead the sky blackens. A swarm of 353 Imperial Japanese Navy aircraft, Val dive bombers wheeling like vultures, Zeros capering in escort, Kates loosing their loads in lazy arcs. Bombs whistle earthward, 550-pounders from each D-3A Vals, stitching the Arizona's deck with fireballs that bloom orange and obscene. The Oklahoma heels over, torpedoes punching her like fists to the gut, her hull groaning as she turtles in the mud. Miller's world tilts, literally. A skillet cartwheels from its rack, eggs splattering the deck in yellow accusation. The ship lists, bulkheads creaking like old bones, claxons begin their wail, then a banshee's keen piercing the pandemonium. Whoop, 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 whoop. Pilots on deck, this is not drill. Calhoun grabs a stanchion, eyes wide as saucers. Jesus jumpin' Jehoshaphat, Dory. It's the goddamn nips. They comin' for breakfast. Miller steadies himself, the giant's calm, a counterpoint to chaos. Instinct surges, years of football at Waco's Moor High, tackling linebackers twice his speed, hauling hay bales heavier than hatred. He shoulders a fire hose, barking orders to the mess crew scattering like roaches. Lock it down, boys. Charlie, grab the wounded kit, topside now. Ain't no frying pan gonna hold this fire. They surge upward 2 flights of companionways, the air thickening with cordite's acrid bite even below decks. Shouts echo, incoming, take cover. Explosions staccato the symphony, boom boom boom, as the second torp strikes amidships, buckling plates and berthing a blaze forward. Flames lick the paint, black smoke belching from hatches like dragon's breath. The harbor's harmonic howl begins, screams syncing with sirens, waves whispering wreckage against the tide. From the air, it's apocalypse scripted in smoke. The California settling by the bow, her crew abandoning in oily swells, the Nevada shuddering under a stick of bombs that crater her casemates. Zeros strafe the rails, 7.7mm tracers stitching sailors like seamstresses gone mad. Blood paints the planking red, copper tang mingling with burning rubber and the sulfurous spray of ruptured fuel lines. Bennion, on the bridge wing, clutches the rail as shrapnel whines. A splinter scoring his thigh, unnoticed in the adrenaline. His voice, steady as scripture, crackles over the circuit. Damage control to forward fire room. Anti-aircraft. Commence firing. Carry on, lads, carry on. But the mounts are ghosts. White gunners late to stations, black hands barred from belts. The West Virginia's 50 cal Brownings sit idle, brass jackets cold, their gospel silenced by policy's prejudice. Miller and Calhoun burst topside, the hatch vomiting them into Inferno's antechamber. The deck is a charnel carnival, Rigging a fire, life jackets smoldering, men clawing at wounds with fingers black from powder burns. A third torp glances off the counter, exploding harmlessly astern, but the list deepens, Wee settling into the muck, her bow dipping like a curtsy to calamity. Miller's eyes scan the maelstrom. A Zero rakes the boat deck, bullets chewing the teak. A Kate banks low, its payload plummeting toward the superstructure. No time for triage, instinct ignites. He spots a fallen radio man, leg pulped to jelly, and hauls him to shelter. The man screams, a serrated edge against the roar. God? Tell my wife? I tried. You hold on, sailor. Ain't no Jap taking you today. Calhoun feeds him a belt of 3006 from the armory cache. Their solidarity's shadowed but sure. Around them, the fleet fractures. The Arizona's magazine detonates at 0810. A 1,000-foot mushroom cloud of orange fury that flattens hangars on Ford Island, the shockwave slapping waves against the West Virginia's hull like a giant's palm. Debris rains, steel confetti, body parts indistinguishable from bulkhead shards. The air tastes of brass and brimstone, the harbor's surface slick with unspent oil, rainbow-sheened and treacherous. In the wardroom, officers scramble, their silver breakfasts scattered like omens. Mess attendants like Miller are phantoms here. Until now. He pushes forward, through smoke that stings like hornets, toward the bridge where Bennion stands, eviscerated by a bomb's edge. Guts uncoiling like wet ropes, his face ashen but unbowed. The assault's aerial avalanche peaks, 40 planes per carrier wave, 183 total aircraft committed to this dawn's deceit. Bombs birth infernos that claim towers, torpedoes rip hulls, claiming 2 or 3 souls in the span of a sermon. Paradise pyres. They heard the klaxon as routine. They didn't know the harbor was hailing their heroism. The bowels of the West Virginia are a labyrinth of labyrinths, riveted steel corridors snaking like veins through the Leviathan's guts, lit by the wan glow of battle lanterns that flicker like fireflies in fog. Humidity clings here, a perpetual mist born of the ship's breath. Boilers hissing forward, evaporators churning brackish water into steam that beads on bulkheads like sweat on a fevered brow. The air is thick, textured, the metallic tang of machine oil underscoring the yeasty rise of dough in the bread room, the faint ammonia bite of heads, that's Navy for latrines, wafting from the scullery. It's a world apart from the topside tango of signal flags and salt spray, a submerged society where black sailors forge fraternity in the forge of forgotten labor. Doris Miller moves through it like a shadow given form, his frame filling the narrow passageways without complaint. At 6'3", he ducks hatch comings with the grace of a man who's learned to bow without breaking. Lessons from Waco's wide fields, where the sky pressed down with the weight of white expectations. Mess duty is monotony's masterpiece. Dawn to dusk in the galley, wrists raw from wielding scrapers on grease-caked griddles, feet aching from the perpetual polka of pot washing. No gunnery school for him, no torpedo drills or turret tango. The Navy's color code confines him to the culinary caste, a steward's stripe on his sleeve, a scarlet letter of limitation. Adventure's what you make it, he muses, folding napkins into precise pleats, each crease a quiet crease against the crease of conformity. Minds in the margins. Passing, notes in the dark. The mess decks hum with shadowed solidarity, a chorus of low murmurs and muffled mirth that binds the black crew like barnacles to the hull. 20-odd souls in this steel womb. Cooks, attendants, laundrymen, exiles from the enlisted ranks above, where white sailors chase horizons while they chase crumbs. They call it the Black Gang, not for coal but for the pigment that paints them pariahs. Yet here, prejudice's pause yields to peril's prelude. Shared smokes in the fireroom shadows, gospel hummed over hash browns, dice games that defy the deck's damp chill. It's blind faith in the blues brotherhood. A creed unspoken, etched in the exchange of contraband comics and the collective flinch at officers' footfalls. Seaman First Class Charles Calhoun leans against a scullery sink, his wiry frame coiled like a spring in a salt shaker, scrubbing a pot with vigor that borders on violence. His grin, perpetual despite the grind, flashes white against skin, the color of polished mahogany. From Mobile, Alabama, another Jim Crow jewel, he enlisted to escape the chain gangs, only to find chains reforged in khaki. Dory, you see that ensign up top yesterday? Strutting like he invented the sea. Bet if the tide turned, he'd holler for one of us to swim him ashore. Pass the lie. This skillet's stickier than a politician's promise. Miller obliges, his massive paw dwarfing the jug, pouring with the precision of a surgeon. His laugh rumbles low, a bass note that vibrates the deck plates. Ain't no tide gonna turn for him, Charlie. We're the ones keeping this tub afloat, literally. You, me, the whole gang down here. They eat our sweat, sleep on our steam. One day, maybe they'll taste the salt in the stew and remember who stirred it. Calhoun nods, eyes gleaming with the fire of the half-read Hughes pamphlet tucked in his bunk. The Negro speaks of rivers verses that flow like contraband rum. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. It circulates like scripture, binding their blind faith. The Navy's a family fractured, but family nonetheless. Up there, whites drill on 50 cals, their fingers fluent in fury. Down here, black hands blister on Brillo pads, their fury fluent in folklore. Restraint is their religion. Swallow the slurs, shine the shoes, and trust the tide turns for all. Brotherhood in blue, Miller reflects, stacking trays with a clatter like castanets, even if it's blind to the bruises. A hammock symphony, 40 bodies swaying in canvas cradles, the air stale with the snores of the spent and the sighs of the sidelined. Miller slings into his, the netting groaning under his weight like a lover's lament. Beside him, mess attendant second-class Jimmy Slim Harris, late teens, lanky as a flagpole from Harlem's hustle, whispers across the gulf of gloom. Heard the brass talkin' about maneuvers off wake. Say the Japs got eyes on Guam. You think it's comin', Dory? Real war, not this swab and serve sideshow? Miller stares at the overhead, rivets staring back like judgmental stars. His mind drifts to Waco. Mama's Bible on the mantle, Daddy's ghost in the furrows, the 1936 flood that drowned dreams but not determination. Enlistment was escape. 3 squares, steady pay, a uniform that said sailor, not servant. But the Navy's no new deal. It's the same old deal, repackaged in saltwater blues. War's always comin', Slim. Been comin' since Pharaoh chased Moses. But us, we fight it quiet like. Keep the coffee hot, the deck's holy. One day, they'll need our hands on more than mess kits. Till then, we hold the line down here. Harris snorts, soft as sin. Hold the line. It's their mantra, murmured in the machine shop where they mend officers' whites while mending their own mended pride. Solidarity shadows every shift, pooling pay for a stateside sister's tuition, smuggling sax solos on wind-up phonos that scratch Ellington against the engine's thrum. Blind faith? It's the glue, trusting the fleet's fractured fellowship will fuse when the forge heats. No riots in the ranks, no refusals at reveille, just restraint, resilient as rubber tree sap, yielding but unbreakable. The breakfast brigade, Miller at the range, flipping flapjacks with a spatula the size of a broadsword, the sizzle a sibilant serenade. Grease pops like punctuation, yielding to the sea's sulphurous whisper seeping through vents. Harbor brine, a tease of the world above. Calhoun chops chives with a cleaver's cadence, while Harris hauls ice from the freezer, his breath fogging in the chill like a dragon's sigh. The menu's mundane, eggs over easy for the enlisted, eggs Benedict for the brass, irony's omelet, served with a side of segregation. You know, Dory, if them zeros come callin', bet they'd mistake this for a diner. 2 torpedoes, sunny side up. What you reckon? We get to fire back or just fetch the fire hoses? Miller pauses, batter dripping from his ladle like molten regret. Fire back. The words hang, heavy as unspent brass. He's seen the guns on Liberty runs, 50 cal Brownings perched on sponsons like watchful hawks, their barrels bored for business he's barred from. Training's a white man's waltz. No black boots on the gun deck, no fingers on triggers. Policy's prejudice, penned in Washington ink. Mess duty for colored recruits, combat for the chosen. Yet in the quiet, he dreams the dream. Grips claimed, belts fed, thunder from his touch. We fetch what needs fetchin', Charlie. Hoses, bandages, whatever. But if it comes, we all sailors. Blue don't see color in the crosshairs. A nod ripples through the galley, a wave without water. Their faith is blind but binding. The Navy's a behemoth that swallows slights, spits solidarity. Officers like Captain Bennion, distant deities, fair but firm, preach unity in sermons from the bridge. One ship, one fight. They believe it, these black bellies of the beast, restraint their rosary. Disaster's the great leveler, Miller thinks, sliding a tray into the dumbwaiter. Pray it don't come to that. The torpedo's tilting terror strikes without sermon. Below decks, the world wrenches. A seismic crump that shivers the struts like a giant's stomp. The West Virginia heels starboard, a drunken lurch that sends pots pirouetting across the galley floor, batter splattering bulkheads in abstract accusation. Lights flicker, die, resurrect in crimson emergency glow. Steam hisses from a ruptured line, scalding the air with superheated spite. The deck assumes an angle, treacherous as a Texas two-step on ice, forcing hands to claw at grab rails, feet to fight the slide. Claxons join the jamboree now, whoop whoop, a wail that worms through the welds, summoning sailors from slumbers shattered. In the engine room, black gang stokers, the real ones, coal-heavers of every hue, scramble to secure fires, their faces suited masks of mayhem. Alarms blare, torpedo hit amidships, flooding forward compartments, all hands to battle stations. Miller's first, surging from the galley, a colossus in crisis, bellowing over the bedlam. Calhoun, Harris, lock the hatches, plug the pots, topside if you can, but mind the list. Calhoun stumbles, fetching up against a freezer, his grin gone to grimace. The ship's song shifts, from steady thrum to tortured keen, plates groaning as water whispers in, a lover's murmur turned to drowning dirge. They claw upward, companionways crammed with coughing crew, whites from berthing, blacks from bowels, a tumbling torrent of terror. Smoke seeps down, acrid as accusation, laced with the copper tang of blood from a gash unseen. Dory, it's listin' bad. Feels like the whole damn harbor's tiltin'. Breathe easy, Slim. We built for this. Navy's tough, so are we. But doubt's a dagger in the dark. The second torp follows at 0757, a deeper thume that buckles the keel, birthing a blaze in the paint locker that licks ladders with orange tongues. The list steepens to 10 degrees, then 15. Decks awash in ankle-deep brine, oil slick and sinister, sucking at boots like quicksand's kiss. Hatches jam half open, forcing Miller to shoulder them wide, his frame a fulcrum against the frenzy. Below, the mess decks flood. Coffee urns tipping like drunks, silver sinking in suds, the monotony's mercy drowned in deluge. The bowels birth bedlam, bulkheads buckling, rivets popping like champagne corks in hell. Miller hauls a fallen steward, mess attendant Franklin Tiny Reese, pint-sized but pugnacious, over his shoulder, the man's whimpers a wheeze against the roar. Water rises, cold as contempt lapping at knees then thighs. Blind faith frays at the edges, why us first, why always the unseen? But restraint holds, no panic, just purpose. They form a chain, passing wounded hand to hand, black and white blurring in the blur of battle lanterns. Calhoun, coughing cordite, feeds a flashlight's beam forward. Bridge says, hold the line, Dory. But this line's slippin'. Then we knot it tighter. Ain't no dividin' and drownin'. Move. Explosions punctuate from above, bombs baptism echoing down shafts like judgment's gong. The third torp glances at Air 802, exploding astern in a plume that rocks the rudder, the ship's tail twitching in torment. Terror tilts everything, faith, floor, future. Yet in the crush, solidarity surges. A white damage control man, bloodied but brotherly, clasps Miller's arm. Damn white. Mess boy, grab that pump, we're all in the drink now. Boy, the slur stings, salt in the soul. But Miller grips, pumps surging bilge against the breach. Restraint recoils into resolve. The blues brotherhood, blind no more, demands they dive deeper. The passageways pulse with peril, steam scalding, sparks spitting from shorts, the harbor's howl filtering down. Distant detonations drumming like war drums, screams surfacing like bubbles from the deep. They claw toward a hatch, the world a whirl of wet and woe. Monotony's mercy yields to mayhem's mandate. Shadowed solidarity steals against the storm. The torpedo's tilting terror tests the tide. Will the bowels break or bind them unbreakable? They thought duty divided them, until disaster demanded unity. The sky over Pearl Harbor fractures into fury's fresco, contrails crisscrossing like chalk on a blackboard of doom, the sun a sullen witness behind veils of oily smoke. The West Virginia lists at 20 degrees now, her starboard side kissed by torpedoes triad. 3 fish from the Kate's bellies, each a 450-knot harpoon that punches the armor belt below the waterline, flooding magazines and machine shops in a symphony of sluicing sea. Forward, flames forge a firewall. The aviation fuel tanks ruptured, spewing 10,000 gallons of high-octane hell that ignites in a whoosh audible over the din, painting the forecastle in leaping lemurs of orange and gold. The air is a sensory siege, acrid bite of cordite laced with burning paint, the copper tang of blood mingling with the sulphurous spray of ruptured boilers venting steam like dragon's sighs. Waves lap at the well deck, oil slick and iridescent, whispering wreckage against the tide, shattered spars, spent shell casings, the flotsam of a fleet fracturing. Overhead, the shadowed salvo surges. The second wave's vanguard, 171 aircraft strong, wheeling in precise predation. HED-3A Vals stoop like hawks on a hare, their fixed landing gear glinting as they release 550-pound bombs in lazy parabolas. Wump, wump, wump. The whistle a siren's seduction before the baptism by blast. One craters the West Virginia's turret too, the concussion crumpling casemates and catapulting a gunner skyward, his scream lost in the roar. Zeros, elegant as katanas, cap air the chaos, their 20mm cannons barking green tracer sermons that rake the rails, stitching sailors with leaden lace. The harbor's harmonic howl crescendos, explosions syncing with screams, the Arizona's cataclysmic cough at 0810 sending a pressure wave that slaps the West Virginia like a boxer's hook, glass shattering in the pilot house, men staggering like drunks in a gale. Doris Miller emerges from the bowels like a colossus unchained, his dungarees soaked to the skin, the brine cold as contempt against his Texas tough hide. The deck is pandemonium's palette, teak splintered to shrapnel confetti, life rafts smoldering like forgotten cigars, the wounded wailing in a chorus cacophonous and cruel. A bomb walks the deck at 0803, a stick of 3 from a valve's ventral rack, detonating in sequence. First amidships, birthing a geyser of flame that singes Miller's brows. Second aft, crumpling the galley vent and venting hot air that blisters paint. Third glancing the stack, toppling antennae like felled palms. The ship shudders, her list deepening to 25 degrees, the world tilting toward the turquoise tomb below. Miller's haul begins instinctively, a giant's grace in the grinder. He spots Seaman second-class Tommy Red O'Leary, early 20s freckled farm boy from Iowa, leg mangled by strafing fire hauling toward the rail, blood trail painting the planking crimson. No hesitation. Miller scoops him up. The man's 160 pounds featherlight in those bowl-breaker arms, and bulls forward through the smoke, bulkheads blurring in the haze. God almighty, legs gone, tell my. His voice trails to a gurgle. The wounded's wail, a wet rasp that saws at Miller's soul. Not today, brother, Miller thinks, italics of iron in the inferno. Ain't no ma getting that telegram. He dumps O'Leary behind an upturned whaleboat, slapping a tourniquet from his kit, torn khaki sleeve, knotted tight. Staunching the flow with pressure born of football fields and family feuds. Around them, the baptism bathes all in blood. A white quartermaster, eviscerated by shards, clutches his guts like a spilled sack of grain. A black laundryman, face flayed by flash, whimpers prayers in patois from Port-au-Prince. No color in carnage. Segregation scorched by shellfire, the deca-democracy of the damned. Calhoun, emerging coughing from a hatch, face smudged with soot, eyes wild but welded to will, joins the fray, hauling a fire hose that snakes like a circus serpent across the camber. Dory. Forward's a furnace. Bennion's bridge is bleeding. We gotta get through. Miller nods, the giants calm a lodestar in the lunacy. They charge the conflagration, flames 20 feet tall, heat warping the air like a mirage over Mojave, the sizzle of superheated steel underscoring the crackle of combusting cordage. A Zero stoops low at 0807, its prop a buzzsaw blur, 7.7mm rounds chewing the superstructure in a staccato snarl. Bullets whine past Miller's ear, zip zip zip, one grazing Calhoun's shoulder, drawing a hiss but no halt. The wounded's wail swells, a chorus from the charnel, moans merging with the metal's moan as the ship settles, her hull kissing mud at 30 feet. Captain Mervyn Bennion stands eviscerated sentinel, a bomb fragment from the Val's salvo at 0805, having opened his abdomen like a zipper from sternum to groin. Guts gleam wet in the firelight, uncoiling in ropes he presses back with blood-slick hands, his uniform a ruin of gold braid and gore. The bridge is a butcher's block, charts aflame, helm unmanned, the 1MC crackling static sermons. Bennion's face, stern as Sinai, pale as parchment, holds to duty's decree, his voice a rasp over the roar. Bennion, signal the fleet, abandon if you must, but carry on, carry. His words gasp out, final as a flag furled, eyes locking on the chaos below, his crew clawing for cover, anti-aircraft mounts smoking from sporadic fire, white gunners late, their prejudices pause a perilous price. The wounded whale reaches him. A gunner's mate, jaw unhinged by blast, bubbling pleas. A signalman, blinded by flash, flailing blindly for the yardarm. Bennion slumps against the rail, the harbor's howl his hymn. Distant Arizona echoes fading to thunder's afterclap, the sea sucking at the ship like a sinkhole's sigh. Miller and Calhoun breach the blaze, hoses hissing arcs of salt water that sizzle on the pyre but staunch nothing substantial. The heat is hell's handshake, blisters blooming on bare arms, sweat evaporating before it falls. Miller spots the captain through the scrim of smoke, a silhouette of sacrifice, and surges forward, the deck bucking beneath him like a bronco in birth. "Captain, hold fast, I'm comin'." Bennion's gaze finds him, mess attendant black as midnight but in this maelstrom, man as measure, a nod, weak as winter wind. Miller, "The guns, man them, forgotten country." The order hangs, heresy to the hierarchy, a dying decree defying the color code, gunnery's gospel granted in extremis. Miller hauls Bennion aft, the captain's weight a deadweight dirge, 200 pounds of command collapsing into cradle, entrails trailing like regret's ribbon. Blood soaks Miller's front, warm and viscous, the copper tang sharp as a slap. They stumble through shadows, bulkheads buckling, sparks spitting from severed circuits, the ship's list now 35 degrees, gravity's goad urging all to the sea. Calhoun. "He's bleeding out, Dory. Get him to the sick bay if it's still afloat." But sick bay's awash, the corpsman crushed under a collapsing catwalk. Miller drags on through a companionway choked with choking crew. A white lieutenant, arm akimbo, leaning on a black steward for support. Their divide dissolved in the deluge. The wounded's wail follows. A litany of loss. "Mama, hurts. Why us?" Each cry a chisel on Miller's calm, chipping at the colossus to reveal the core of courage. The haul to the hatch of history. Miller shoulders Bennion into the relative shelter of the aft sponson, a gun tub shielded by the searchlight platform, its shadow a scant sanctuary. He eases the captain down, propping him against coiled hawser, the ropes rough as redemption. Bennion's breaths come shallow, ragged as torn canvas, his hand clasping Miller's wrist, white on black, a tableau transcending the tide. You're the backbone, all of you, tell them. Carry on." His eyes flutter, the light leaching from them like tide from shore. Miller nods, throat tight as a noose, the giant reduced to gesture. Backbone. The word wars with the world's weight, mess kit to monument in moments. Around them the salvo's shadow lengthens. A cape banks low at 820, its torpedo shadow slithering submerged, but the West Virginia's counter-flooding holds, the list stabilizing at 40 degrees, her keel kissing coral in defiant embrace. Calhoun arrives, dragging a wounded radio man whose fingers twitch Morse in the air. SOS unspoken. They triage in the tumult. Bandages from belt pouches, morphine syrettes jabbed like judgment, the air thick with the patter of hot casings from sporadic 50 cal bursts forward. Ghost guns firing blind, their white crews finally cresting the chaos. But aft the mounts stand silent sentinels. A twin 50 cal Browning M2, water-cooled barrels cold, ammo cans yawning empty. Belts unspooled in the panic. Segregation sabotage, no black hands trained to feed the beast. The gun gathering dust while death dances overhead. Miller's eyes fall on it, the hatch to history, ajar and beckoning. The deck vibrates with vibration. Another bomb at 0822, cratering the quarterdeck and catapulting debris that peppers the sponson like hail from hell. The wounded whale peaks, a crescendo of cracked voices, the harbor's pyre painting all in flickering flickers. Instinct ignites, injustice's ember fanned to flame. "Man them," Bennion gasped. Untrained, unbidden, but unbound. He rises, leaving the captain to Calhoun's care, the haul complete from bowels to bridge, mess to metal. The assault's shadowed salvo surges on. Zeros wheeling for a third pass, vowels vanishing into the victor veil. But in the giant's gaze the gun gleams, brass jackets beckoning, grips griping for the grasp that policy forbade. The gun that gathered dust was about to gather glory's gaze. The aft sponson of the West Virginia is a crucible carved from catastrophe. A gun tub of riveted steel 10 feet across, ringed by perforated screens that rattle like maracas in the maelstrom. The twin 50 caliber Browning M2 heavy machine guns squat here like twin sentinels scorned. Barrels 45 inches long, water-jacketed to quench the thirst of sustained fire. Their breeches yawning for belts of 50 API, armor-piercing incendiary rounds, each 660 grains of brass-jacketed fury. Ammo cans, 100-rounders stacked like cordwood, gleam dully in the firelight, belts coiled serpentine within, links of steel feeding 2,700-grain projectiles at 500 rounds per minute. But the mounts are monuments to neglect, abandoned in the assault's avalanche, their white crews scattered to damage control or drowned in the deluge forward. Segregation's shadow lingers in the empty grips. Padded handles cool as complicity, triggers untripped by hands deemed unfit. Doris Miller stands before them, a colossus cast in crisis, his broad back to the blaze that devours the superstructure aft. Sweat rivers his face, carving canyons through the soot mask, his dungarees charred at the cuffs where flames nipped like hounds. The air is an assault on the senses, the acrid bite of cordite from sporadic forward bursts, laced with the greasy reek of burning paint and the copper tang of blood. Bennions, O'Leary's, the harbor's harvest, mingling with the sulphurous spray of sea foam cresting the rail. The ship's list, at 40 degrees, turns the deck to a slide toward perdition, gravity goading gear toward the scuppers, forcing Miller's boots to brace against the camber, thighs burning like boiler coals. Overhead, the sky seethes, Zeros carving contrails and capers, Vals vanishing into the Victor Vale, but the Kates return, torpedo bombers, bellies gravid with fish for the stragglers. Man them, Bennion's gasp echoes, a ghost in the giant's ear. Untrained, no qualls on the range, no familiarization with the gun's gospel, but unbidden no more. Miller's hands, blistered from brillo and bowl-breaking, hover, hesitate, then claim the grips. The padded steel yields like fate's forgiveness, molding to palms that have polished silver but never pulled trigger. Its transformative touch, the 50's weight, 84 pounds unloaded, a deadweight dirge until instinct ignites, turning tool to talisman. This ain't no skillet, he thinks, the italics of audacity amid the anarchy, but it cooks the same, heat from the heart. Calhoun, crouched by Bennion, applying pressure to the captain's wound with a belt from his own kit, voice a ragged rasp over the roar, glances up, eyes saucering at the sight. The mess attendant mounting the mount, a black silhouette against the smoke-shrouded sun. Dory, you crazy? That ain't your station. Brass'll court-martial you for touchin'. Court-martial the dead, Charlie. Captain said, carry on. I'm carryin'. No more words, only action's anthem. Miller swings the gun on its pivot mount, the squeal of bearings a prelude to the symphony. His frame fills the tub, 6'3" of Texas oak eclipsing the casings that patter from forward fire, hot brass, spent and smoking, skittering across the deck like brass beetles in retreat. He scans the sky, a Kate at 1,000 feet, 300 knots, banking low from the port quarter, its pilot, ends. Haruo Yoshino, lining up for a skip bomb run, the bomb's shadow slithering like a shark's fin across the oil-slick swells. No time for sights. Miller's crosshairs are instinct. The gun's lead rule his guide. Track ahead, squeeze smooth. Belts fed. He yanks a 100-rounder from the can, the links clinking like chains unchained, threading it into the receiver with fingers fumbling but fierce. The bolt cycles home, chunk, chambering the first round, a prayer in powder. The searing symphony commences. Miller's thumb depresses the butterfly trigger, left for one gun, right for the twin, and the 50s awaken with a belch biblical in its bellow. The report recoils like rifle thunder amplified, a 15-minute torrent that shakes the sponson like a maraca in God's grip. Muzzle flash blooms orange, strobing the shadows. Recoil hammers Miller's shoulder, a boxer's hook that bruises bone but buckles nothing. Tracers arc skyward. Every fifth round a pyrotechnic pointer, red lances lancing the leaden sky, painting parabolas of protest against the aerial assault. Hot casings eject in brass cascades, pattering on the oil-slick deck like metallic rain, sizzling where they kiss the brine. The air thickens with cordite's cough, a blue haze that bites the lungs like battery acid, the gun's barrel heating to cherry red within minutes, steam hissing from the water jacket as it boils its bath. From the air, it's Armageddon annotated. The Kate jinks, Yoshino banking hard as tracers stitch his six, the incendiaries igniting wingtip fuel in fleeting flickers. Miller tracks, traverses, left 30 degrees, elevation cranking with a wheel that blisters his palm. The giant's calm, a counterpoint to the chaos. No formal fire control, no director, no deflection gear, just raw reckoning. Lead the nose by the prop blur, hose the heaven with hate. The belt feeds furious, links rattling through the gun like rosary beads in rapture, 500 rounds a minute, devouring the darkness of doubt. This is what they denied me, Miller reflects, the recoil's rhythm syncing with his pulse, a drumbeat defying the divide. But peril don't pull by pigment. Calhoun, abandoning Bennion's fading form to fetch another can, feeds the frenzy, slamming home a fresh belt as the first runs dry, the transfer seamless in the sear of survival. The captain stirs, eyes cracking open to the spectacle, his messman-made gunner, Black Thunder, cracking the blue. Good, lad, give him hell. His voice fades to froth, the final gasp a benediction. Around the sponson, survivors surface. A white gunner's mate, arm bandaged by Harris, crawls to assist, awe eclipsing antipathy. Gunner's mate. Christ, keep pouring it on, you're dropping lead like a demon. No boy, no bar, only brotherhood in the barrage. The symphony swells. Forward mounts join the jam session, sporadic 30 cals chattering in counterpoint, but Miller's 50s dominate the dirge, their deeper roar drowning the dive bomber's drone. A Zero peels off at 8:29, raking the boat deck with 20mm spite, shells cratering the canopy, wounding two. But Miller swivels, hosing the fighter's fuselage in a 20-round burst that shreds ailerons, sending it spiraling seaward in smoke. Climax's crosshairs converge. The Kate, undaunted, presses the run, Yoshino losing his payload at 500 feet, a 550-pound bomb that skips the surface like a stone from hell, detonating 50 yards off the beam in a geyser of green water and white foam. The shockwave slaps the hull, rocking the West Virginia like a cradle in colic. But Miller holds, grips white-knuckled, teeth gritted against the gun's gyration. He leads by yards, the tracer stream a scarlet serpent coiling toward the bomber's belly, where the ventral gondola gleams vulnerable. The torrent triples as Calhoun slaps in a third belt, the 50s singing their searing song. Incendiaries kiss the Kate's wing root at 0833. A flash, then fire, a fuel line fractured, JP-4 igniting in a bloom that engulfs the starboard nacelle. Yoshino jettisons torpedoes in vain, two fish plopping harmlessly astern, but the plane crumples, ailerons aileroning awry, nose dropping in a dive toward doom. It clips the West Virginia's foremast, shedding shards of silver wing, then cartwheels into the harbor 200 yards off the bow. A fiery fall, exploding on impact in a secondary that sprays shrapnel like confetti from the damned. The pilot's chute doesn't bloom, silk snagged in the pyre, his karmic crash a coda to the colossus's courage. Cheers erupt from the deck, a ragged roar from the ragged ranks. Black and white, wounded and whole, united in the ululation. Miller doesn't hear, he's traversing already, the gun's barrel smoking like a preacher's pipe, water jacket gurgling dry. 15 minutes of blistering fire, perhaps 7,500 rounds, belts exhausted in 4 cans, buying precious seconds for the survivors scrambling for rafts. The revelation recoils in the rifle-like report. One untrained burst, and the Navy's narrative fractures. Segregation scorched, not by edict, but by ember. The 50s barking down the bonds, equity erupting from the emplacement. A Val stoops next at 8:35, but forward guns fend it. The assault wanes, the third wave wavering as wildcats from Enterprise claw the clouds. Miller slumps against the mount, shoulders screaming, hands raw as revelation. Blisters burst, palms printed with powder burns. The gun cools, steam curling like surrender, casings ankle-deep in the tub, a brass beachhead of bravery. You downed that bastard, Dory. Clean kill. They can't deny this. Hell, the whole fleet saw. Miller nods, exhaling smoke and spent fury, eyes on the wreckage bobbing in the bay, a down Zero's echo, but his own. Didn't train for the fight, he muses, the phrase forged still glowing in his veins. Fought anyway, that's the recipe, ain't no rank in reckoning. The sponson falls quiet, the symphony spent, but the stand's seismic shift lingers. A cook's courage cooking change, one salvo scripting the surge toward equity's dawn. It didn't train him for the fight. It simply forged the fighter from the fray. The West Virginia yields to the yoke of her wounds, her hull a hollowed husk settling stern first into the shallows, the mud of Pearl's floor a soft grave for her steel spine. Flames gutter forward like dying embers in a hearth of hate, the pyre's peak past but its pall lingering. Smoke veils the vista in gray shrouds, the harbor a cauldron cooled to curdled chaos. Oil slicks the surface, a rainbow requiem thicker than blood, its sheen iridescent under the climbing sun, November's false warmth mocking the maelstrom's chill. The air hangs heavy, textured with the aftertaste of apocalypse. Cordites cough, fading to the acrid ash of charred cordage, the sulphurous spray of settling swells laced with the copper tang of congealing carnage. Waves whisper wreckage, a symphony subdued, the creak of capsized canoes, the slosh of severed spars, the faint, fading wail of the wounded adrift. Abandoned ship, the order crackles over the fractured 1MC at 0945, Captain Bennion's last legacy, his body lashed to the bridge wing in rigor's rigid salute, eviscerated emblem of command's cost. The deck, canted at 45 degrees now, is a treacherous traverse, planking peeled to peril, scuppers clogged with casings and corpses, the list luring the living to the lethal lee rail. Survivors swarm the fantail, 150 souls salvaged from 1064, a ragged remnant of white gunners, black stewards, officers, and ordinary seamen, their divides dissolved in the drink. No muster by rank or race, peril's pull has forged a fellowship fluid as the flood. Doris Miller, the colossus cooled but unquenched, hauls the last of the line. A cluster of wounded winched from the well deck. O'Leary with his tourniquet tight, Harris with shrapnel scars stitching his shoulder like seamster's spite. His hands, raw from the 50s grips, blisters burst to bloody badges, palms powder-printed. Clasp ropes that snake to Carly floats bobbing below, the raft's rubber rings ringed with rope ladders, slick as sin. One more, he urges himself, the italics of exhaustion etched in every heave. Ain't leavin' none behind. Not today, not after. Face gaunt as a ghost, shoulder bandaged with khaki rags, but grin ghosting through the grime. Slaps a life jacket over Miller's frame, the cupock bulky as borrowed bravery. Dory, you done enough. Hell, you done everything. That Kate's kindlin' for the crows now, thanks to you. Get your ass over the side. Miller shakes his head, the giant's gaze sweeping the deck. A white lieutenant, leg lost below the knee, dragged to the rail by Slim Harris. A black laundryman, lungs laced with smoke, coughing cadence into Calhoun's palm. The odyssey unfolds in oils, boots slipping on the sheen, hands hauling against the drag, the sea sucking at ankles like a siren's sigh. They lower the wounded first, ropes groaning under girth, splashes sinking with sobs as bodies breach the brine. Miller's the pivot, the pulley of flesh and fortitude, bracing backs, binding slings, his voice a base bulwark over the babble. Easy now. Breathe with the heave, 1 foot, then the float, we all making it home. A final glance aft, the 50 cal mount, barrel bowed from the barrage, casings congealed in cooling pools, a monument to the moment, the stand that scorched segregation's script. The ship shudders, a sigh from the settling steel, bulkheads buckling below as the harbor claims her curve. Miller vaults the rail last, the drop a weightless wrench into the warm Pacific womb, oil coating his skin like lacquer, the raft's edge a lifeline grasped in the gloom. The rafts drift in desultory dance, a flotilla of the Forsaken tethered by lines to the West Virginia's fluke, her chain umbilical to the unborn dawn. 50-odd souls per float, bodies balled against the bob, the harbor's harmonic howl hushed to hushed horrors. Moans from the mangled murmurs of mates lost, the distant drone of PBY Catalinas circling like condors come to catalog the cost. The sun climbs cruel, baking the brine from brows, but shadows stretch long, smoke from the Arizona's pyre, a 1,177-soul scar that scorches the soul. Oil clings, insidious as injustice. It gums the paddles, greases the grapples, a slick reminder of the spill that spared none. Miller mans an oar, his strokes steady as scripture, the raft a microcosm of mended divides, white sailors sharing smokes with black stewards, tales traded in the troughs. You see that burst? Messboy turned ma deuce maestro. No slurs in the swells, disaster's demand has drowned the decree. Calhoun paddles beside, the gap-toothed grin reborn in the respite. They muster us later, Dory. Survivors roll. What you tell 'em? Served breakfast, then served the Japs their comeuppance? Laughter laps the low sides, a tonic against the tide. Miller's reflection ripples in the oil. Eyes obsidian orbs holding the harbor's hell, but lit from within, the blaze of the burst, the revelation of recoil. Measured by metal, he muses, the phrase forge firing forward. Not mess kits, not anymore. A Navy launch putters near at 10:15, bosun's chair swinging like salvation, hauling the halt to Ford Island's triage tents. Miller waves off the hoist, others first, his humility a halo in the haze. By noon, the rafts beach on the mudflats, medics swarming like locusts on locusts, the Odyssey's end etched in exhaustion. Bandages bound, broth sipped from canteen cups, the first fragile sleep under canvas strung from spars. The reckoning ripples outward, a stone from the sponson skipped across the sea of souls. Muster on the 8th. Miller's name called amid the 300-odd from WeV, his stand sketched in survivor scrawls. All Hands magazine witnesses crediting the 50s salvo with the Kate's karmic crash, tracers arcing like arrows of equity. Whispers weave through the wards. That big colored boy on the aft mount. Down to bomber cold. No courts for the color breach. Peril's precedent pardons, Bennion's benediction, a blanket absolution. Admiral Chester Nimitz, Sinseek-Pac's steely sentinel, pins the tail to his tactical board, one untrained torrent turning the tide of tradition. Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox, in dispatches dated December 12, hails the conspicuous gallantry that echoes Executive Order 8802's fresh ink, FDR's June 41 fair employment fiat, now fanned by Pearl's pyre. Rosie the Riveter's resolve hardens. Black shipyard hands hammering hulls in Brooklyn, stewards surging to signal school, the cascade commencing in Cook's courage. The Enterprise, gray ghost of the Gilberts, slices swells under a sky scoured by scouts. Miller stands at attention on the hangar deck, his khaki crisp, the Navy Cross pendant gleaming, V for valor, the first for a black sailor since Crispus Attucks tumbled at Bunker Hill. Nimitz pins it cool clasped on khaki. The medal's weight a whisper of worlds shifted, applause echoing across a divided deck now daring unity. Miller's face, unlined but lined with legacy, holds steady, his mother's telegram from Waco, proud as the Mississippi sun, tucked in his blues. Seaman Miller, your actions at Pearl Harbor exemplify the highest traditions of the naval service. In the face of enemy fire, you manned a weapon with which you were not familiar, and succeeded in downing at least one enemy aircraft. The words wash over him, waves without wreck. Not familiar. Euphemism for excluded, but the conferral cracks the code. Broadcast nationwide, CBS crackling the courage coast to coast, it ignites the anthem. Langston Hughes. The Negro speaks of rivers recited in rec halls, verses of veins ancient as valor, patient as progress. Miller's family in Waco receives the ribbon's replica, Mama Henrietta clasping it to her breast like a locket of light. The pantheon of pioneers welcoming their prodigal. Just did my duty, sir. For the captain, for the ship, for all of us. Nimitz nods, the admiral's eyes etching the equity. One stands scripting the surge, mess decks to monuments. The poignant postscript. Liscombe Bay, CVE 56, a Casablanca-class carrier crammed with 900 souls, her decks a democracy dawning. Black sailors now on guns, in engine rooms, the color line blurred by Pearl's blaze. Miller, promoted to ship's cook, 3rd class, his cross a loaded star, stands watch amidships when dawn's deceit strikes again. A Kate's torpedo at 5:11, piercing the magazine in a cataclysm that claims 644, including the galley giant. The carrier crumples, a funeral pyre for progress's price, bodies boiled in the blast, survivors scorched by the surge. Miller vanishes in the vapor, his legacy a lodestar unextinguished, whispers in the waves, a burst that outlives the blaze. The cascade crests in 48, Truman's desegregation decree, Executive Order 9981. The fleet fused at last, blue to black, no bars on the battle stations. Miller's measure, destroyer named in his nod, USS Doris Miller, DDG 133, commissioned in 2020, her keel kissed by welders of every hue, her 50 cals crewed by Cook's kin. Waco's wayside whispers his worth, statues in bronze, schools in his shadow, the anthem amplified, from galley hand to glory's grasp. The quiet revelation, courage cooks in crisis, uncommissioned but unchained. The stand didn't just down a plane, it downed division's decree. He fired what fate forbade, fanning fairness's flames. In war, the greatest gun isn't the 50, it's the grit that grips it unbidden. They thought the Navy measured men by mess kits, but Miller measured by metal. If you believe one untrained burst breaks bigger barriers, subscribe for more untold World War II stands against the storm.